everyone. Thank you for joining me today for the Virtual Mini Masterpiece program. Today we're painting The Goldfish by Henri Matisse. Before we get started with some information about Matisse and getting into our project, let's go through our materials that you can pick up at the reference desk. So you're going to find a 5x5 canvas. It's painted in a peach color all ready for you. You'll also have your reference photo, which looks like this. You'll use this throughout your painting. And then the paint colors you have include peach, red apple, harvest orange, bright yellow, new shamrock, laguna, lime tree, light pink, dark pink, purple, and black. All right, so those are the colors that you'll use today. You'll use some more than others, and I encourage you to put your own spin on it. That's kind of what I did here. You'll notice the purple I changed a little bit. If you do want your purple a little closer to this one, you'll just add a little bit more pink. Okay, so some of the supplies you'll need to gather from home include a pencil, some paper towels, and a cup of water to rinse your brushes. I'll show you the brushes that I used. I used 3, all smaller ones. So this was the largest one that I used. So something flat with a straight edge. Then I used something thinner, still with a similar look, but just a smaller one. And then more of a detail brush, something nice and thin and narrow. All right, so those are the ones you're gonna wanna have close by. All right, so before we get started, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Matisse. You'll notice there's so much use of color in this painting, and that was pretty typical for his style. He was known as a fauvist. This was primarily in the early 1900s. That's when a lot of these types of works came out. Initially, his style was not well received because it's not realistic, and that was the type of style that was very popular at the time. So this was one of his first paintings that he displayed in this new style. This is actually a painting of his wife. It's called Woman with a Hat from 1905. And you'll see there's so much color in here, and it has a sketch-like quality to it. It's not super realistic, and that's kind of what the critics thought when they first saw this. They thought it was kind of a little bit of a mess, didn't understand the use of color, didn't understand that sort of unfinished sketch-like quality. And something I always like to bring up, I find this to be very interesting, because Matisse was asked what color hat his wife was actually wearing here, and his response, well, before I tell you, see if you can guess what color you think that hat was. Matisse said the hat was black, of course. So I found that to be very interesting because we've got pretty much every color in there. So interesting interpretation of the color black. A couple more that he painted that he's very well known for include The Joy of Life, also from 1905. You take a look at this, you'll notice right here in the middle, there are these folks dancing here, and he did another one called The Dance, where he basically zeroed in on these here and then eliminated one person. So this one only has 5 people, but this one was called The Dance. This one was another very interesting one, and the style is so different in each of these than some of the works that were mainstream at the time. So he was certainly an avant-garde artist. And then before we get started, I'd like to show you, because I cropped our version. This is the Goldfish, the one that we're going to be painting today from 1912. This one has a little bit more to it than what we will be painting today. We're just going to go right into that center portion. But this is the whole picture. So kind of neat. Alrighty, so we'll talk a little bit more about Matisse as we get going, but let's go ahead and get started with our sketch. So we're going to want to take our time a little bit with this. We want to know exactly where we want the colors to go. So I'm just going to start right in the middle. I tend to start with the larger shapes before I jump into the smaller shapes when I'm sketching, but feel free to do what feels right for you. If you're ready to draw some other parts that I'm not on yet, please go right ahead. Okay. Oh, and you're gonna wanna have your reference photo close by. All right, I'm going to set my original, or my version aside. Get situated here. Oh, one other thing that you'll probably want to have with you is like a paper plate or a palette, something like that, so that you can mix a little bit of the colors. I'm going to just do it right on my backing here. Okay. All right, I'm going to start with the fish bowl. And you can erase, of course, if you need to. Even though the canvas is painted, it'll still erase okay. There you go. So we have those intersecting circles just because of the perspective on the water and the top of the opening of the glass here. Right, I'm going to go ahead and get that table in the background on here as well. So we're not really drawing for detail exactly, we're mostly just drawing for position. In other words, we just want to know which areas need the color. Most of our focus will be on the color. So while I'm over here, I'm just going to put this chair, what I think is probably a chair. Let's get that in there. Okay, there we go. Just going to lightly carve out this area on my canvas so that I know where I want my black concentrated. Going to start drawing in my plants now. Let's see, I'm gonna start over here. Just gonna get sort of the general shape of this leaf. And a couple of those little leaves that are beside it. Gonna jump over here, get that other large leaf. And that one's sneaking out behind. Okay. I'm gonna jump up to the top. Don't worry about getting everything perfectly placed. In other words, if you omit a leaf or two, that's totally fine. Believe it or not, I did. I did right up here. So do what you need to do to get it to fit nicely. As long as you get the gist of it, you'll be in good shape. Part of putting your own spin on it. Okay, there we go. Just gonna put my stems in. Okay, just going to draw some of these little rose shapes. I'm just literally doing that. Here we go, a bit of a stem. I've got some, there we go. So I know where my flowers go. Okay, I'm gonna jump down to my table and put those plants there. Okay, now we've got this big leaf that hangs right off of the table. Feel free to pause the video too while you work on this. Okay, so I've got most of my outside done. I'm going to go ahead and put my fish in there. I'm gonna start with the one over on the left, and then we'll put the reflections on later, or next rather. Okay, so you just want to get that tube kind of a fish shape going. Don't worry about the eyes or the mouth or anything. We'll paint that on after. We just want to get sort of that shape going. All right, we've got our fish, and I'm just gonna put a couple of little blobs just to remind myself in that reflection that those are gonna be those reddish orangey color. Okay, so that is about all the sketching I'm going to do. I'm gonna jump right in with the colors. All right, so the first parts that I'm going to work on are some of these background parts, and then we're gonna work our way forward. The trick with this is to layer and to not overthink too much. You wanna apply the color and kind of move on, if that makes sense. All right, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and begin with our purple. So you're gonna take some of your purple, and what I often do, I've got the bottles here, but you've got your paint strips, so you're welcome to just dip right into those and mix a little bit in the caps or on your palette. Okay. And I'm going to recommend, out of the 3 brushes that I recommended first, take that middle one, that one that's like the medium size brush. Okay, and I'm just gonna show you what I'm mixing. I've taken a little of my dark pink, little of my purple, just to get a tone that I like. And that's what you can do. You can use either the straight purple, or you can mix a little bit, get a little bit of that tone. I like to have a little of that peach handy, just to temper my color a little bit. And this is the same color that's in your background. So there you go. And I'm not blending too much. We still we wanna see the ins and outs of those colors. We wanna see a little bit of them. We don't want it too mixed. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start right over here because this is the darkest part in that purple. So we're gonna start here and we're gonna work our way counterclockwise. And you want to see some of those brush strokes. So don't worry too much about filling it in perfectly. Just get it covered. And we can always polish up the edges later. And use any brush you like. I tend to like the larger brushes. I know some folks prefer using a finer brush, so just use what feels right to you. As I work counterclockwise, I'm going to mix a little more of that peach in there. Basically, I'm just dabbing the peach. I grabbed onto a little more pink for this side. Okay. And also what I'm doing is when I've got a color that I like on my brush, I'm just going to pull it through a couple other areas of the painting. There we go. Okay. All right, so we've got kind of a rough kind of color right in there. Okay, and I don't rinse my brush too many times. Sometimes I just wipe it, just wipe a little of that excess off, because now we're going to go ahead and work with our black. So we're going to get some black in here and over here, and you'll notice as we get towards the top, it does have a little of that purple in there. So you don't need to rinse the brush. That should be totally fine. All right, I'm gonna start over in the darkest black area. And you, for this part, you can use that slightly larger brush if you want to. Okay, I'm just gonna take a tiny bit of my purple and just mix it with the black a little bit. I just want like a little purple highlight. Very subtle. And I'm going right up to the edge of the table. I'm not, however, going to paint within my bowl yet. I'm going to wait on that. Let's focus on the background first. And as I'm moving upward, I'm adding a little bit more of that purple. And this doesn't have to be a hard line right here because it really isn't in the painting. You can soften it a little bit the way I did, right like that. Okay, I'm gonna jump over here. And we can polish the lines between afterwards because that is something Matisse did. He outlined, so we'll work on that after. So that'll make certain parts pop and it'll differentiate. That way we can differentiate between the different pieces. But it won't look that way quite yet, so don't worry if it looks kind of funny at this point. Just gonna take a little pink now. I'm gonna mix that with my black in this corner. And I'll even add a little more pink up here. And this balances things out very nicely, adding a little bit of pink to your black. And don't worry about painting over your stems. Sometimes it's just a little easier to just do it. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, so now that we have our background done, you can give your brush a good rinse because we're going to switch up our colors now. We're going to get into the greens. So we're going to start painting in those leaves. You're going to start with New Shamrock. So that's your darkest green. Can also use some of your Laguna, which is that, it's sort of that turquoisey color. So that greenish blue. And then your lime tree, which is that limey color. So these are the three you're gonna wanna have handy for the leaves, okay? All right, we're gonna start with a nice clean dry brush. We're gonna use, and I'm still using this brush. This one's working for me. Feel free to change it whenever you need. All right, so I'm gonna start with this leaf over here on the right. I like to start with the outline. I'm gonna dip into my blue a little bit. Give it a little variation. And what you can do, either in this step or in later steps, if you show your brush strokes coming from the center and working outward, like this, how I did in this one here. I did this on a final step. That way you get that leaf look to it. But for now, we don't really need that, but you could practice if you wanted to. Okay. All right, and we can add to this, but we're gonna start with that. Okay, this leaf here is pretty dark. This one right below it. You can always add a teeny bit of black too if you feel like you need to darken it a little bit. So very teeny bit, so that you don't get like a mud. Go. And again, anytime you have a color on your brush that you like and you want to put it in another spot, go for it. Okay, this one is a little darker. I'm gonna add a little bit of my lime. So it's not quite as dark as this one. And it doesn't have that bluish look to it either. And you can see I'm using very loose strokes and I'm doing it rather quickly. The idea is to keep those brush strokes loose and to just put the color on and then move on quick. That's sort of what I mean by that. Just gonna refine my edges here. There we go. I wanna give some of that, that look, that wavy edge to the leaf. Okay. Going to work on the leaves right above here, right on the top portion. Okay, I'm going to add a couple of these stray leaves that are right up here. There we go. Okay, I'm not rinsing my brush, I'm just wiping a little bit, but I'm going to use mostly this lime color for this leaf here. It's partially behind the bowl. Okay, and I am going to paint the leaves that are in this bowl right now, even though we didn't do the background yet. That's fine. Don't worry if things start to look like blobs. We will go back in and refine our outlines, and that way everything will look distinct. For this one, I added a little bit of black. There we go. I'm using a little extra blue right up in this corner here. What I'm going to do is I'm dabbing. Just dab a little bit in a couple of those spots. Don't cover too much of what you have already painted. You can overlap a little bit, that's fine. But you want to let some of that black come through. There we go. Just a little dabbing. A little bit over here. There we go. While I've got some of this blue on my brush, I'm just going to paint this chair that's like right over here, just like, I think it's an arm of a chair, something like that. So since our leaves overlap onto it, I'm just gonna go ahead and put a couple of loose strokes here, leaving a little bit of space so that some of that peach shines through. All right, now that I've got that all set, I'm going to go ahead and put my leaves, and I'm using more of the new Shamrock. Okay, use more of my lime for this color, for this one on the right. And what we'll do is we're going to, once we let this dry a little bit, some of our greenery, we can go back in and we're gonna add a little bit of yellow, we'll add a little bit more green, like different shades of the green. So it might look kind of flat at this point, but that's okay. Okay. All right, so now we're gonna add a little bit of yellow. I'm gonna do a bit of the yellow. Since we've got our blue ready, we're going to need that. So what we're going to do is get some of our yellow right in here with our blue in the water, and then work on a little bit of the reflection. Then anything else that we want to add a little yellow to, like I'll be adding a bit of yellow onto this one here, and then a little down the center. So that's what we'll do next. So you'll want to give your brush a rinse. So we want to make sure that the colors remain distinct, since we know that blue and yellow can end up creating green. We don't want green water, we want to have distinct colors. Okay. So what you want to do is dab each color individually. You don't have to rinse the brush, but you want to dab each color individually, put it on the canvas, and then use the next color. So I'm starting with the blue. I'm just adding it right around the fish where there's like a little bit of a shadow from the fish. And then a little at the top of the water, and a few spots right in there. Then you can just take your yellow and a little of the blue will get on there, but that's fine. It can mix a little bit. so you kind of have, it's dabby. If you do make any strokes, sort of short strokes is what you'll want to focus on. You can add a little more blue if you want. If you find your color is turning a little green on your brush, just wipe it off or give it a rinse. And what we can do is, once we get our initial coat on, this is another spot we're going to revisit a lot of these areas so that we can layer a little bit. Okay, but that's pretty good for now. All right, so up here, there's not much blue. You can have a little bit of blue on your brush. You won't want to have too much. I'd even say get a little of your orange involved if you need to. Just to make the yellow like just a teeny bit orangey. You don't want too much, but just a little bit. You just want to look in the different areas that you're painting, see what color you see, and just put that color there. You don't have to worry about it looking exactly perfect yet. And more towards the top of the bowl here, there's a little bit of that bluish. Just a teeny bit. Okay. There we go. All right. So what we'll do next is now that we've got some orange out, I'm just gonna take my orange, lighten it up just a smidge, and I'm going to paint my pot. I'm leaving a little extra space to put a little dirt right in there. This one's a little more orangey. Then it's got like this little kind of orange corner right up here. You can temper it with your yellow. Okay. All right, I'm gonna give my brush a rinse. I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow to some of my plants, especially this one here. Just going over some of the tips, like about halfway from the center to the tip of each leaf on this plant. And I'm even gonna take a little of my green, my shamrock green, my darker green, and right at the base of the plant, add a little of that. A little bit of yellow down the center of my other plant that's on the table. There we go. Okay, let's do our goldfish next. I'm gonna get a little red involved. The red really brightens up the goldfish. So what I did was I just mixed a little of my red with my orange. And it's okay if it looks very like your goldfish are red. That's okay, because we're gonna add a little orange on top of it. But this gives it a nice base. And you can add a little orange as you paint, and then we'll add some after it dries. we go. I'm going to add a little more orange to that red, and I'm going to use more of an orangey red for the reflections. So I'm just putting a little blob. Let's paint that right in. Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna see if our fish are ready for orange yet. All right, so we're gonna let our fish, I'm adding a little bit of orange just to thicken it up, make it a little more opaque. There we go. All right, but I'm gonna pause on that. I'm gonna wait for it to dry, and then we're gonna put a little orange on there. Okay, so we're gonna jump into our pinks now, and we'll get some of this pink in the background. We'll get this flower here painted. We'll finish the fish bowl, then we'll go through and we'll add a couple layers of colors and we'll outline. Okay, so let's get your light pink ready and your dark pink. All right, so start with the light pink. You're just gonna paint that right up into this corner here. It doesn't have to, there's no hard line for it, as you can see. I'm just sort of dabbing it right in those negative spaces. So you need very little of that light pink. I'm not even going to rinse my brush. I'm just taking some of that dark pink and I'm dabbing to make those flowers up here. And I'm leaving a teeny bit of negative space so that some of that peach comes through. Okay, and you can always put even, I feel inspired to add a little of that light pink in there. Okay, there we go. Add a few more flowers today. Okay, there we are. Okay, I'm gonna jump back to my purple and pink. I'm just mixing a couple of these to get that orchid color that is right here. So it blends in quite a bit. So I'm gonna use some of that lighter pink and I'm just dabbing that outer shape. And then on the inside, I'm just gonna take some of that purple and dab it right in the center. Okay, just like that. I'm gonna take a little of my black. I'm gonna add my dirt to the potted plants on the table. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and finish the background of that fish bowl. So I'm getting myself a little more black. I am also, oh, and I have some peach. You want black and peach. Okay. Just gonna dip a little of that just to lighten up, soften up rather, my black. I'm gonna start up here. It's a little darker on the right. And this, you might need the smaller brush at this point. And don't worry about painting over your stems. Sometimes it's just easier to just do that. Alrighty, so we've got kind of a grayish happening. You can define that bowl a little bit too at this step in making sort of a curve. I'm going to add a little black right here. You can either do that now, or you can do it when we outline. There. All right, now I'm going to do the same, basically the same thing, but a little bit lighter in this area of the bowl. So it's a little black, little peach. Okay, all right, so now we've got our entire our entire canvas painted. All right, so I'm gonna rinse this off. So now we'll add some of the details, we'll layer up a little bit, and we'll outline. Okay, so what you'll do is, now this part is more personal preference. So you can take a look, I'll do it with the goldfish, because that part we definitely need it. If you look at your leaves, if you want to add some layering, definitely do that now. You can darken up certain parts, or you can add a lighter color, add a little bit of yellow if you wanted to. Oh, well, I've got orange. I'm just going to darken up my potted plant here. What's nice about this painting is that it's supposed to have a rough kind of a look to it. So don't worry about it looking exactly perfect. All right, but yes, so you'll notice when you add some orange to your goldfish, when you layer it, you get such a nice rich color. I'm going to add a little bit into the reflections as well. Okay, now you can also take a little of your yellow, just putting a little bit of yellow down the center of the fish. It's pretty subtle. There we go. All right, so you can see how nicely things layer. So the more you layer, the more depth you get to each color. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to my little brush, my detail brush. I'm going to get some black on here. I'm gonna put some eyeballs on my fish. So they're really teeny. Just a little dot will do the trick. Okay? You mostly just want to get the placement about right, but then a little dot. His has a little more detail than we're gonna do, but it'll look a little better to just keep it simple. go. Okay, now there are different outlines in here. There are, like, some parts have a black outline and some have this peach outline. So we're gonna kind of walk through, we'll note which parts have what, and also it's time to put some stems in there. So I'm just gonna start with my outlining first. I'm gonna take some black. I'm gonna start on my fishbowl, right at the bottom. And it doesn't have to be like super perfect. And you wanna make sure your brush is dry. I just noticed mine's a little wet. So if you get it, because your outline you want a very dry brush. But luckily, if it is too wet, you can just dab the way I just did there. That'll be fine. Okay, so I'm just going around now, just outlining a little bit on a couple of the leaves. And not everything has it. Most things do, but not everything. The hardest one is probably this one. What you want to try to do is get one continuous line. A couple of stems are black right over here, like from these flowers. So I'm just going to do really thin. And your stem to your orchid. You want to barely touch your brush to the canvas. I'm gonna make my stems now. It's kind of in that lighter color, that lime tree. Just adding a little more blue to this leaf here. Adding a little more green, little variation to that leaf there. You want to work from the center outward. That way it has a natural look to it. Add a little more blue up here. All right, so that is about it for today. So from this point, you can just add any more details that you'd like to add, personalize it however you'd like, layer up as much as you'd like. I hope you all enjoyed this project today. If you have any questions, feel free to either send me an email or you can write your question, just post it below the video. I'll do my best to answer those questions for you. All right, well, thank you so much. I hope you all enjoy yourselves. Have a good one.